we are super glad that you're with us tonight for the CCO's Next Generation celebration for our Mid-Atlantic region. It's officially December. It's Giving Tuesday. We know that you guys could be investing the resources that you have in time and in treasure that God has given you stewardship over anywhere. And so we're super thankful that you've decided to spend that time with us tonight for this brief amount of time this evening. It's going to be great. We're going to hear a lot about how God is at work on campus through people who are employed by the CCO and really who are empowered by the Holy Spirit to do his work around the Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you know what? One of the blessings of COVID and this event is that we have people joining us from all over the place. Folks that haven't maybe necessarily come before when we've had it in a spot in Philadelphia. So we're really excited to have a lot of folks with us tonight that aren't usually here. And in this year that seems to never end, right? 2020 just keeps going on and on. But I've been looking for moments and opportunities when God shows up, right? And when he reminds me that he is the God who brings water out of rocks. And when we are looking, we can find more of those moments. And we really hope that tonight is one of them for you, where you get to see the ways that God is bringing hope into places of great challenge and darkness. Because despite the challenges of this year, it is true that God is working. And he gives us these opportunities and challenges where we get to hit the reset button and we get to bring all of what we're facing to him. So, yeah.
So we've got a great schedule lined up tonight. It's going to include a favorite speaker from CCO in 2020, this past February, right before COVID hit. It's also going to include a Q&A between Beth and I and him, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun to kind of witness. We'll have some testimonies, pre-recorded testimonies from staff and students and donors who are going to explain kind of what the Lord is doing through them and in them and their involvement with the CCO, and also an opportunity to give. But that's not all. Should have brought my knives. There's also going to be some music from Joy Ike, a dear friend of the CCO and of our region, and so she's wonderful. So we'll have a little music from her as well. More music from her. And right now, or earlier, you should have already received a text message if you won something in the auction, and so that's already ended. If you're a winner, then you've got that text message. And so, Beth, what did you bid on?
Well, I bid on some wonderful jewelry, but unfortunately I didn't get it, but I did bid on it. And I'm sure that whoever got it is going to love it. I thought it was really lovely.
Well, maybe Tori's watching and can get that as a hint.
Maybe. Yeah. If any of you have any technical issues and challenges tonight, any questions, feel free to call or text this number, 412-952-3116, and anybody can help you with any problems that you're having. But overall, we are so glad that you're here, and we really hope that this is a great evening for you to connect with us, with anyone that you're watching with, and to be inspired by the good work of CCO staff on campus. So thanks for choosing to be with us tonight.
Yeah, and I'm going to change my coat because the beauty of these llamas are burning my eyes right now. Just how beautiful they are.
Yeah, we're going to get changed, and we'll see you in a little bit.
Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. On the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is Lord. While shepherds kept their watching o'er silent flocks by night, behold, throughout the heavens there shone a holy light. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is Lord. The shepherds feared and trembled when low above the earth rang out the angels' chorus that hailed the Savior's birth. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is Lord. He's 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 Lord. Oh, come, let us adore Him. Oh, come, let us adore Him. Oh, come, let us adore Him. Christ the
Well, hello, and welcome everyone, all of you, to this year's NGC. It's quite different than last year's, and a lot has happened since then, and you're going to hear about that tonight. But we are honored to have you here with us. Thank you for spending your evening here in what I would call worship, because everything we do is worship to God, and the things that He is doing through students on campuses, and really in homes, those students who are not able to be on campus, is wonderful. And it's amazing just to see how God moves. No matter where we are, no matter what we're doing, we're never too far from His reach. So thank you for being here tonight and just hearing and worshiping and praising God with us for all the things that He's doing.
Hi again. So everybody, I am really pleased to welcome this evening Justin Whitmel Earley. He is one of the favorite speakers from this past February at our Jubilee conference. He's the author of The Common Rule, Habits of Purpose for an Age of Distraction, which everybody who registered for this evening should have received in the mail. And if you haven't, you can let us know and we will make sure that you receive your book. Justin is a father of 4 boys, a business lawyer, a husband to Lauren, a citizen of Richmond, Virginia, and someone who loves writing and talking about habits. And he's going to tell us a little bit about his story and testimony to kick us off, and I really hope you enjoy our time.
Thanks, Beth. And hello, everyone. So my story starts a couple years ago, and it was around the 48-hour mark of not sleeping about 6 years ago that I finally decided to go to the hospital. And what I remember from that evening, being in the emergency room about 3 a.m., the question on my mind was not, what is this sudden extreme anxiety and panic that's overtaken me and keeping me from sleep? The question on my mind that night was, am I going to make it back to the law firm tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. to get to work, or are people going to find out what's going on? As it turns out, I did email my supervising partner and my secretary about 5 a.m. that morning, letting them know that actually I wouldn't be in, that I had some medical issues that night. And I left it really vague just at that, because I didn't want them to know what was going on. And the truth is, however, I didn't really know what was going on. I had been seized by inexplicable panic and fear that was keeping me up all night, but I had no real idea why. A month later, I would be a complete wreck, up in the middle of the night, just the same, wild fears, wild thoughts, and ending up relying on a bottle of bourbon or a bottle of pills to fall back asleep. I'd come to a really dark place, and I did not know what to do. So, as you might guess, I am introducing you here to what was the worst time in my life. But something else that you should know about that time is that I was then, and I still am now, a devoted follower of Jesus. And the question that came up then and has really haunted me ever since is this: how is it so common that otherwise sincere followers of Jesus, like myself, find ourselves nevertheless racked by anxiety and panic and the mental struggle? Why is it so common that we who profess a gospel story of hope and peace often find ourselves still in the same common stories of mental crisis that so many Americans experience? The answer that I came to over a couple years of unraveling this was that this has a lot more to do with habit than I ever expected. Let me tell you how I got there. So about 10 years ago, I started my career after undergrad at UVA as a missionary in China. And I loved it and probably would have done it for many more years, except after 4 years, I had this calling experience where I felt the Lord calling me actually to leave China and go back to the States and become a missionary within the vocation of law. A loaded statement on calling, I know. That might be for another time to explain. But what you should know is that I left China to go to law school with all the fervor of a man on the call. And at first, it was really working for me. I graduated around the top of my class from Georgetown Law. By the time I got a job, and it was my dream job in mergers and acquisitions at a large law firm in my hometown of Richmond, Virginia, I was married to my wonderful wife, Lauren. I had 2 kids. I spoke Mandarin Chinese for my time in China. Things were going really well for me, except for one thing. I was completely overwhelmed by my schedule. I had totally assimilated to the top law school student lifestyle of always adding more to your calendar, always paying attention to your phone, always being constantly on alert to the beeps and rings and dings. But I didn't think this was a problem because that's how we all lived. So I look back now and I see that the house of my life was really sincerely decorated with Christian content, but the architecture of my life, the architecture of my habits, was just like everyone else's. And eventually, this all fell apart, and I ended up like where I began, in the hospital. And I wrestled in the months, because this was not a quick fix. In the months after this anxiety collapse, I wrestled with this idea of how did the missionary to law and business become converted? Because I was the missionary to law and business. How did the missionary to law become converted to the nervous medicating lawyer in such short order? And while I wish I could tell you that it was simple, it was long and complicated. But looking back, I see now that I was converted, as so many of us are, by habit. Here's why I think that's true. I found myself about a year later, sitting at a table with 2 of my best friends, going over a program of daily and weekly habits. How did I get there? I was asking my friends, Matt and Steve, that night to keep me accountable to this program of habits because it was kind of a last-ditch effort. My wife and I, we had tried counseling, I had tried medication that year, I tried a lot of things, but nothing was really moving the needle. So I was just trying to be good. I was trying to be a good boy and say, I was in crisis, I'll do anything. So I came up with this kind of program of daily and weekly habits to try to rein in my chaos. I want to be really clear. I didn't think any of this stuff was going to matter. Even though I was sitting with my friends that night, asking them to keep me accountable to it, I thought all this stuff was way too small to be important. They were little things, little habits to counter my kind of addiction to busyness and technology. Little things like I committed to having 1 communal meal each day so that I wasn't always just eating on the go constantly and ignoring community. I committed to taking a Sabbath once a week so I wasn't just constantly working. I committed to having 1 vulnerable conversation with a friend each week so that the busyness of life didn't crowd out any possibility of fellowship. And then on the technology side, I committed to small stuff like never looking at my phone in the morning until after I had read some scripture and had a short time of prayer. I committed to each evening turning my phone off for an hour so that I could actually be present with my family. I did not think any of these little things would matter. In retrospect, I see I was wrong. I was wrong because I had no idea how much the smallest patterns of our days and weeks actually do impact our souls, not to mention our emotional and spiritual health, our souls in the most extraordinary ways. My life began to drastically change. It completely changed. And I'm talking to you tonight as someone who actually still lives according to these little habits, which is much more important to me than the fact that I went on to write a book about them. Much more important than that is the fact that I actually still lean on these spiritually formative habits. And now I'm in the same line of work. I have 4 boys, so life is arguably more stressful, and yet the panic is gone. And the peace of the gospel is now not just something I profess, but something I feel like is woven into the practice of my life. So this means I'm talking to you tonight as somebody who can say from experience that Jesus is with you. He was with me. He is with us in the deepest valleys of our suffering, and even our worst struggles with mental health or other sort of sufferings. They have meaning, and he draws you providentially through them for a reason. And the reason that I see now is now that I feel like I'm not only called to be a missional lawyer within my vocation, but I'm also called to be someone who missionally speaks about habits and the way they're forming us. I feel like I am now called also to write and speak to the American church and say, we must wake up. We've got to wake up to the fact that we are being formed by our ordinary daily and weekly habits in extraordinary ways. These habits of phones, our habits of eating, our habits of rest and work and busyness of screens, none of these are neutral. All of them are significant. All of these are probably the most important parts of our spirituality in modern life. In fact, I would probably go so far to say that if you're listening to this tonight, probably one of the most important factors in your walk with Jesus is how you use your screens on a daily basis. Probably one of the most important factors in your walk with Jesus is how you use your screens. These ordinary habits are forming us in extraordinary ways. And what happens when we do not choose them carefully is we default to the American norm, which means we are letting someone else choose our habits for us, which means, because I want to make sure you understand this is a matter of discipleship, which means we are most likely being discipled through our habits, but not by Jesus. We are being discipled through our habits by American culture. And when your head and your worldview, goes one way, but your habits and your practice goes a completely other direction, guess which way your heart follows? Our heart always follows the habit. And this is the gravity of what I tried to write about in my book, The Common Rule. The idea behind The Common Rule is to say, what if we paid as much attention to our spiritually formative habits as we do to our worldview claims? Because we need both. And so I lay out in the book a program of 8 daily and weekly habits that came from the habits that were on the table that night with my 2 friends. And if you wanted to read more about them, you can check out the book that CCO has wonderfully sent you. You can go online to thecommonrule.org and read about them. But most importantly now, I just want to contextualize it to our moment, just for a minute here. A couple months ago, well, now 7 or 8 months, I'm not good at counting, but I went and had the privilege of speaking at the Jubilee conference, CCO this year. And I gave a seminar on how not to have a mental breakdown. And I remember the divider in the ballroom that I spoke in was pulled up. And nonetheless, there were students sitting on the floors in the aisles, sitting on the floors in the back row, packing the house. And I did not know whether to be overwhelmed by joy or by sadness, because apparently the way to pack the house is to talk about how not to have a mental breakdown. Apparently, it is such the norm now to drive ourselves to mental crisis that we need stories, habits, and teachings of how to live in the gospel of peace. This was all just 3 weeks before the crisis of COVID and quarantine hit. How much more now are we living on a slant towards loneliness, towards isolation, towards anxiety and constant stress? How much more now, for example, practically speaking, do we need a habit of scripture before phone to make sure that we let the word of God refresh our vision of reality each morning instead of letting our screens calibrate our vision of reality? Because the screens will tell us that the world is falling apart a little more each day, but it's not true. Because in the vision of reality, according to God, the world is being renewed. I mean, how much more important is it now, for example, to have regular meals in our homes and in our houses? Because regular meals together, that's what's going to keep us from turning into people who just live together and weather our loneliness in the same house. or actually make us friends. Because meals, eating together, that's what turns people who live together into family, or people who are roommates into friends. How much more now do we need rhythms of actually being vulnerable and disclosing ourselves to somebody every week when we are lost behind Zoom calls and lost in our isolation? How much more do we need to go to a backyard fire, for example, and tell the truth about our life to somebody on a regular basis? These are the kinds of practices I think that keep us alive, but especially help us endure in hard times such as we are in now. And the point I'll end with here is that I want everybody to know that as I talk about habits, it is so essential to know that habits do not change God's love for us. That is not at all what we're talking about. But what we are talking about is that God's love for us can and should change our habits. In the dark period that America is in right now, America is crying out for people to live the light of a gospel-centered life. And it would be a beautiful thing if believers, if followers of Jesus right now, lived such a life that matched up to the truth that we speak, so that we're not just speaking truth into the world, but we're also modeling this beautiful life, modeling to the world that the burden really is easy. The yoke is really light. This is what our neighbors live. I'll end with this quote by a writer I love, Christine Pohl. She said that the greatest sermon we will ever preach is how we live together. This may be more true in our modern moment than ever. We need to not just turn heads and minds, but hearts and lives towards Jesus. We need to use our habits and the way we live to turn people's hearts and minds to the one person that can save us all, and his name is Jesus. He is worth following, and he demands that he disciple all of our lives, habits included.
Justin, thank you so much for that. I think it's, especially coming out of the season of Thanksgiving, there's so many people racked with depression there, but also the holidays is just marked by depression, loneliness, alienation. So we're moving to Christmas right now, where people are going to feel the same thing, and maybe that same sense of what students were feeling, or what some of our friends even on the call are thinking tonight. And so not only that, but we have students who are now entering into finals. Some of them have already taken their finals. So they're actually not only separated from the normalcy of what they would have had pre-pandemic, but also a lot of their community. And so all of this is so timely and appropriate. And I think one of the biggest draws probably is just your authenticity and your honesty with students, but also with us tonight. So I really appreciate that of you. And we're going to enter into a little bit of a time of question and answer now. And I think Beth is going to start us off with the first question for you.
Great.
Justin, I really appreciate everything you said, and specifically right now, as students are going into a time where maybe they're away from friends, why do you see it as being incredibly important that college students develop these kinds of habits while they're in college for the rest of their lives?
Yes. College is such an incredibly unique, and you've heard me say this a lot, and I'm going to use this word even more. It's an incredibly unique and formative time. I mean, so much about college is not actually about getting an education. It's about experiencing formation. I mean, I look back to my time at the University of Virginia and think what I was taught there is not nearly so important as what I caught there by being in, fortunately for me, a vibrant and wonderful campus ministry that turned me from somebody who knew a lot about Jesus to someone who actually followed him. I mean, my life was completely changed by college ministry. And I would, say to anybody who is working or supporting college ministries, and I would say to college students in it, that this is such a fundamental time in the life of a human being. I mean, you leave on a trajectory that will continue, usually just continue for much of your life. And so it's just fundamental that we teach students not just about the Bible and about who Jesus is, but train them on how to live, on how to follow him. Those are the practices that stick. And, I'll I'll end it with this idea. I mean, following Jesus is hard. It's hard. It's hard in college. And guess what? It's hard after college. And training people to know that life is difficult, but that Jesus's burden is light. His yoke is easy. And there is a way to walk in the good life with him right now. I think that's a balm to the soul to any college student who thinks, man, it's hard to stay mentally healthy. It's hard to stay not busy. It's hard to stay in community. It is hard. But Jesus helps with that. And his life is worth, not just following in theory, but modeling in practice. So it's just so important for college students to learn this stuff as early as possible.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. So, we've seen this in college ministry, but it's not just in college ministry. Our friends who are on the call tonight have felt this too. And you kind of mentioned it on the front end, but we have this sort of almost precipitous drop in the way that we relate to one another at the beginning of this pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
See each other face to face. A plethora of articles came out at the beginning that talked about Zoom fatigue. Harvard Business Review talked about how our brains are not meant to actually interact with each other this way.
Yeah.
And so life through the pandemic, in a lot of ways, has necessitated the use of screens almost primarily to engage in business and a lot of everyday life that a lot of our friends on this call probably are still doing today. And so we've got this unique time and space that we've been thrust into. What are some of the ways that we sort of undo those habits that almost the culture of things, but also the crisis of things have thrust us into over 2020? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a good and tough question. I'll start with this though, just broadly speaking, because I think it's so important for believers right now. We are people who can say with the authority of Scripture that God uses hard things to make us into more loving people. All right, so we are like a people who are called to be not afraid of suffering. Because you can name it, like this is hard, this is suffering, right? This is not good for anybody. People are dying, and the people who are living are atrophying in their bodies and souls because of the life that you just described that we're forced into. But I don't want us to look at it as all challenged, but as I don't want us to see it not as just challenge. It is also opportunity, right? It is an opportunity to do a couple things. And one of the things that I would suggest is that this is actually an opportunity to be forced into the smaller and real kind of groups that can actually meet together, that can actually do safely embodied community, and to show that we're a people who fight for that. What I mean by that is that it is possible to go with the flow and just hide behind the screens right now. You can do that. It is dangerous than ever to do that, though. What is also possible is to say that we might not be able to meet in our church services and our campus ministries the same way we used to, but God might actually be using this to push us into local embodied communities of friends that can safely meet. And that might actually be, we might need to reject the nostalgia for what was and embrace the opportunity for what the Lord is doing and say, wait, friendships and small local communities are still possible. And could it be that that's the exact thing that we needed all along? That we needed face-to-face friendships. Again, I can't emphasize enough right now, backyard fires. Getting together in the backyard, safely distanced, but disclosing yourself, actually saying what's going on. I'm not afraid of screens. I love screens. I love a lot of what they do for us. What I'm saying in this is just more an endorsement of friendship and real local community. That's where it's really at. And now more than ever, we have to fight for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really great. And kind of in that same vein, and maybe just like zooming out a little bit, you mentioned before earlier when you were talking that people are really yearning to see us as Christians really live out the gospel in our practice and habits. And right now in this moment, we have a unique opportunity to do that. And I'm wondering with what you talked about and what you talk about in the book, how would you encourage folks to translate those rules kind of into love of neighbor,
Yeah.
and how they express themselves in some significant ways towards our local communities, especially in this time right now.
I'm glad you asked that, because I think when we talk about spiritual formation, especially habit, it can be misread as a program of self-help that's mainly for you, you know. I do not see this stuff as life hacks. I do not see this stuff as productivity trips. I see this as a way to reorient our lives actually out of ourselves and towards the love of God and neighbor. That is a fundamentally outward impulse, just like the gospel is. We are blessed. The river of life flows into us, not so we can just enjoy it, but so that we can send it out and bless the nations for it. This is the fundamental movement of Christianity. And I think paying attention to spiritually formative habits is probably the best thing that you can do to actually love your neighbor. Because, I mean, just think about all that we've just talked about. If we are missionaries to America, right? I'm not the only one that should feel like I'm called to live missionally. Paul calls us ambassadors of Christ. American culture needs Jesus. Blanket statement. American culture needs Jesus. Our culture needs us to show them what truth is, to show them what the good life looks like, to show them what the peace actually looks like, to show them what justice is. And the question is, how do we do that? I mean, and the answer is we got to proclaim it and we got to live it. And the reason I think this is so important is that if you read American culture right now, I think one of my favorite critics, his name Ken Myers, he would suggest that the atheism in American day is not nearly so much of a reasoned conclusion. It's a sticky mood. Which means, if that's true, and I think it is, that the way you disrupt a mood, anybody with a little bit of EQ knows, is not with an argument. It's with a presence. And so the call to be missional in America right now, in our culture, needs to be contextualized to living a certain kind of way and speaking the truth. And this whole argument is to match up our worldview and our habits so that we can be sent out missionally to the land that needs us.
Yeah. So we only have a few minutes left, but we're gonna actually reach back into your soul again, if you don't mind.
I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it.
You opened us up to it at the beginning, but yeah. So how in this moment does following the rule affect the way that you practice law?
Yeah. So you the rule. Some people might know that the title of the book, The Common Rule, comes from an ancient idea of a rule of life, which is a fancy monastic kind of slogan for living according to a set of communal practices. So one of the ways that Christians talk about living according to habits together is a rule of life. And the idea is that we build the trellis. That's why on the front of the book, there's this calendar acting as a trellis for a plant. We build a trellis for life to grow on. And I used to think that if I paid so much attention to these habits and limited my technology and my busyness, that was going to be bad for practicing law, or that was going to limit me. I find that I am a much better lawyer and a much better friend and a much better husband and a much better disciple by actually constraining myself to this narrow path. So law is demanding. A lot of the other professions of you all listening, college is demanding, motherhood is demanding, being a dentist, like life is demanding. But what I have found is that actually living according to a rule of life for habits like this is the most freeing thing for a demanding life. You can finally start doing it for the love of the people in it. I think the thing that's changed the most for me is I think I used to go to lawyering in order to prove myself and earn my love. And now I feel free to actually do a difference.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Justin, this has been a huge blessing for us, just like you're a huge blessing for the students that we had at Jubilee. This has been really wonderful. And I hope for our friends who are on tonight that this is a little bit of a taste of getting into the book. Read it, practice some of these, as Justin was saying, use it as a trellis and find the freedom in kind of following this to follow after Jesus and whatever endeavor he's called you to. And so, Justin, again, thank you so much for your time with us. And we're going to move from here into a few testimonies of staff and students about what ministry has looked like during a time of COVID.
Hey there, my name is Nick Forster, and I do campus ministry in Northeast Pennsylvania in partnership with Fellowship Church. I'm so thankful that even though the ministry has changed quite a bit in light of COVID, that the mission hasn't. We've been meeting with students to do one-on-one discipleship and Bible studies all throughout the week, and a number of our students have said this in response to what they're learning in our Bible study on the book of 1 John. I need to make a choice, follow God or follow the world. Both are not an option. Another student said, he's been teaching me that we are strong through him once we put our trust in him and love him fully. We cannot love the things of the earth, and we must put all else aside for him. And another student said this, only through Jesus can we experience true peace, true satisfaction, and a true love for him and others. Thank you so much for your giving that allows us to be able to walk alongside students in this crazy, tough season of life. It is because of your gifts that help us and be enabled to walk alongside students. Thank you for your giving.
Campus ministry has been such a blessing to me, especially during COVID, as it gives me a chance to meet other students and other people who are looking for the same thing as me, as in fellowship and time of prayer and a time to look and dig deeper into the word. And these past few months we've been praying for campus, praying for the effects of COVID, and just looking at the things that we used to take for granted and looking forward and just trusting that God has his hands in this all.
Hi, I'm Danny Earley.
And I'm Adrienne Wilhoft, and we work at Juniata College in central Pennsylvania.
One of the students that I've been meeting with this semester actually came to know the Lord through COVID, through a friend that she had been quarantining with. She's been meeting with me all throughout the semester each week, coming to Bible studies and fellowship group meetings, and she wants to get baptized before the end of the semester. And it's just been this beautiful testament to how the Lord works, even in the midst of change and chaos.
In the midst of this season, which has prompted so much isolation, we've really found our students to be hungry for community, fellowship, relationship, and just seeing a strong commitment to our fellowship group and our small group Bible studies and other opportunities, even in the midst of a really hard season. So that's been a sweet gift.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everyone! We're super excited to be a part of Next Generation Celebration. My campus minister has impacted my life so much. I never envisioned myself as a student leader, but Dan constantly pushes me every week and challenges me to better love and serve God the way that Christ loves us. Our campus ministry is definitely a lifeline for our community. It allows everyone to come to a safe place and be able to learn about God and share about their lives with one another. Thanks for giving! Thanks for giving!
Well, Jean, clearly God is moving in these ministries. And for those of you watching, supporters of the CCO, your generosity is a really big part of this. We need your help tonight to continue this good work so more students can have an opportunity to be discipled, to come to know Jesus as Lord. And your partnership with the CCO through financial giving gives students the opportunity to hear the gospel of Jesus on their campus. Even during COVID, schools are providing a plethora of opportunities to connect with clubs. And many students who may not have previously attended a club of any kind, let alone a Christian club, are actually looking for community and seeking out opportunities that they don't usually do. And CCO staff have the opportunity to represent Jesus in that place. And for some of them, it might be the first relationship they have with a Christian, or the first positive one. So it's really exciting time to be in ministry despite COVID and the pandemic.
That's right, yeah. And we all know there are needs everywhere. I think that this pandemic has really kind of ripped the lid off of things and shown us a lot of the places where there are greater needs than we would have ever imagined as it was beforehand. But certainly the perennial need is for people, and particularly for college students, to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ and to experience the effect of the Holy Spirit through people's lives. We know that students have really struggled spiritually during the season. A lot of them have struggled mentally as well. And so the work that you guys do in coming alongside us financially and in prayer actually helps to empower staff to be on campus to enfranchise staff to be on campus, to do that gospel ministry at schools all across the country and likely even near you.
Yeah. And we could continue to tell you all the ways that we think it is worthwhile to give to the CCO. But we thought you might like to hear from some of our local donors and what they have to say about why they give.
Hi, my name is Rochelle Fernandez, and here are a few of the reasons why I give to the CCO and why I think giving to the CCO is important. I learned to be a Christ follower in college, and having a campus fellowship was key in that process. College is a time when people are searching and trying to figure out life, and for many, it's their first time living on their own away from home. Having a Christian group on campus that can engage in God conversations and provide a caring, supportive community is key. In addition to campus ministry, I appreciate CCO's emphasis on getting students involved in their local church. It sets them up to stay in Christian community long after college life. I also appreciate CCO's approach of this changes everything. Following Christ is not just about Sundays or whatever day campus fellowship happens to be on, but it should affect how we act and think, how we interact with others and on our jobs. So loving and supporting students and meeting them where they're at, sharing eternal truths, connecting students to local churches, and focusing on how following Christ affects all aspects of our lives are all reasons why I give to the CCO and why I believe giving to the CCO is important.
5 reasons why we support the CCO. Reason number 1, it's a local ministry. We live here in Metro Philly, and like maybe many of you, within minutes of a college campus. I just drove 5 minutes here to Montco to film this. And this is just one of many. If I go a radius of 10, 15, 20 minutes, there's several colleges, thousands of students. Another reason we support the CCO, I was a CCO student alum. And granted, it was a long time ago, but my involvement in the CCO's ministry was a huge impact in my spiritual development. And a lot of what I still live out today in my commitment to Christ and his kingdom are from things I learned in the CCO as a college student. Not only was I a student alum, I also worked for the CCO for 14 years. The CCO has been an invaluable experience, teaching me a ton about leadership, about serving others, and about seeking to, glorify God in every area of life. And so I'm thankful for that, and a lot of those principles still apply to my day-to-day work today. This gets closer to home. 4th reason is my daughter is a graduate of Allegheny College. She was involved in the CCO ministry all 4 years, and a huge impact on her life, and really kept her faith through those critical college years. I'll forever be grateful for the way the Lord used the CCO in her life while she was a student. But the real reason number 5, is because it's a ministry that's committed to the gospel, the good news of the gospel, that Jesus changes people's lives. Yes, the world is created and fallen, but there's redemption and hope, and that's only through Jesus. And that's something that CCO espouses, and so we're more than happy to keep giving and supporting the CCO.
We're really thankful for our donors, and especially for people who are willing to share a little bit of their own story about why they're invested in the CCO. And that's part of my story as well, actually. Through another campus ministry, but in college, a little over 20 years ago, I actually came to know Jesus Christ as well, and that was through campus ministry. And today I supervise staff around the Northeast, and I work with the CCO, and I've worked with churches, and have been doing ministry myself. But the bigger deal is that meeting Jesus in college completely transformed my life. Meeting Jesus in college completely changed the trajectory that I was going in terms of thinking about vocation, in terms of thinking about family, in terms of even thinking about myself. Who am I, and what is my identity? And so just know that for better or worse, there are other genes on other campuses who could be affected by your giving tonight. There are other BETHs on college campuses who could be affected by your giving tonight. And this is a way to really, the way that I think about it is often when Paul writes to the Philippians, he says, essentially, whatever giving is made from you, Philippian church, the fruitfulness of that ministry is to your credit, So the fruitfulness of my life is to some other donor's credit who gave to another college ministry years ago. And if you're able to give tonight, if you're able to join with us in this work, the fruitfulness of that work is accounted to you by the Lord in terms of what you're able to give and how you're able to give.
That's awesome, Jean. Thank you so much for sharing your story. So we're going to take a few moments now, and our good friend Joy is going to come back and sing a song for us. And during that time, I really encourage you to consider how God might have you invest in the ministry of the CCO. We are hoping to raise funds tonight that go towards placing new staff on new campuses where there is no Christian witness as of now. So take a moment to listen to her sing, consider what God might have you do. And you can give now with the Donate Now button that's in your auction platform, or you can give by clicking on the link in your email or in the chat. Even now, we're going to post the link as well. So let's welcome Joy back.
2, 3, 4. Take it all, take all that I've done. My heart's so tired, no breath in my lungs. See these hands too heavy to lift. I don't have anything else left to give. Still, you ever stay by my side. Every low, every high, sink or swim. If I die, ever by my side. Whoa. Highest of heights, deepest of depths, down in the valley of shadows of death. Nowhere that you cannot go. No place, no shadow that isn't your home. Still you ever stay by my side. Every low, every
generosity this evening. We hope that you had a really wonderful time. We were having so much fun that we decided to just put our coat and sweater and antlers back on. And Jean has even said, if someone out there is really disappointed that this lovely jacket was not an auction item, that we could probably work out a deal.
Totally.
Get in touch with him or with me if you're really wanting this jacket. So,
and if it were enough, we might even take you out for a meal.
Yeah.
Bring you a nice bottle of beer.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So be in touch. I also wanted to say the raffle winner is in the chat here now. So congratulations. We are thankful and we hope you have a really great time with that amazing solo stove. We're going to get some good use out of that this winter, I imagine. And also check your inboxes and your email because a receipt will be emailed to you for all of your giving this evening. So thank you.
Yeah. We hope that you guys, as best as you can in the midst of all this difficulty, have a great Christmas and New Year season. We know that this can be a really hard time for a lot of people, but we're thankful, again, that you've decided to spend part of it with us. We'd also love for you to maybe extend your time with us by joining us at Jubilee this year. That's also going to be virtual, and there will be a link for that in the chat. And so it's in February. It's only a one-day thing. And so maybe in the past you've really wanted to go but haven't been able to make the trip. Well, this year Jubilee comes to you. And it's a super affordable, great way to really kind of get a taste of what that looks like for college students in normal times, but in virtual times this year. Yeah. And so thanks for coming tonight.
All right. Have a wonderful evening. God bless you.
God bless you.
Bye.
Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is Lord. The shepherds feared and trembled when low above the earth rang out the angels' chorus that hailed the Savior's birth. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is Lord. He's Lord. He's Lord. He's Lord.